today, and it's Father's Day, and a time for us to be thankful for our fathers. For those of us whose fathers are gone, we pray that you would just help us to have opportunities to have good memories about them, and time of positive reflection. And I pray for those of us whose fathers are still around, that we would show them that we love them. And I pray for us, those of us who are fathers, that you would encourage us today as we seek to be the kind of fathers you want us to be. We pray this in Jesus' name. All right, so I did a quick search on the internet on what it takes to be a good father, right? And so I had Garrett, I want slide A first. Okay. Come on in, have a seat. Slide A. Sounds pretty simple, doesn't it? 100 ways to be a better father. 100. Actually, that's not slide A. That's slide 1. I like slide A.
Oh, that's fine.
You just couldn't put that in the.
I forgot.
A simple list of 100 ways to be a good father. I'm not going to go in. I mean, really, a simple list of 100 ways. Give me 3. You know, if you look at 1 Timothy chapter 4, it gives a list of what the older men are supposed to be like, and then the older women, and then the younger women. And you know what the young men are supposed to be? Sober. One thing, sober. So giving a dad 100 things to do to be a good father is kind of hard. But this morning we're going to look at how to be a new life dad. I've been in ministry now for 25 years or so, and every year we've got to come up with a new Christmas sermon, a new Easter sermon, a new Mother's Day sermon, a new Father's Day sermon, and they can get kind of taxing. So beginning of the week, I was just trying to figure out what in the world I'm going to say to fathers, and then Susie gave me this liberating idea. She said, "Why don't you just preach the sermon you were going to preach and gear it toward fathers?" It was amazing. It was liberating and free. And so we are going to look today at how to be a new life dad. How's that, huh? Incorporating living a new life in Christ into being a new life dad. So we looked last time on Colossians verse 1, which says, 3:1, which says, "Seek those things which are above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of the throne of God." Today we're going to look at the next. We talked about that, what it means to seek after the heavenly things. Today we're going to have a look at verses 2 through 4, which starts out, "Set your mind on things above, not on things of the earth." We can be new life dads, moms, daughters, mothers. Maybe some moms need that twice. Sons, whatever. We can be new life dads by being mindfully devoted to heavenly things. So, of course, you look at the word above, things above and things on earth, and it's really just above and really just earth. And there's not a lot of direct explanation of above things and earth things. So what I did is I did a search in the New Testament looking for the words where that word mindful is. Setting your mind on things above, where it talks about things that God expects us to think in the way that we live. How we think, what does it do? It affects how we live, right? And so we're supposed to seek after what God wants, but we're also supposed to set our mind on heavenly things. And the first area that I saw was that we need to keep a heavenly mindset about ourselves. As fathers, if I am not correctly seeing myself for who I am, guess what's going to happen? It's going to mess up how I'm treating my children is going to mess up how I'm treating my wife and make me not a good person. So the first thing we need to do is in Romans 12:3. For I say through the grace given to me, to everyone who is among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think soberly as God has dealt to each one a measure of faith. And obviously that's talking about spiritual gifts, but it's also talking about who we are as fathers. How many of you had a father growing up? Anybody have a father? Not everybody has a father growing up. But for those of us who have a father, sometimes our fathers can be think more highly of themselves than they ought to think. For example, I remember growing up, one of my dad's sayings, and I believe this is true. I'm 52 years old, so it's been a long time. But I think he used to say, do as I say, not as I do. Am I right, Kelly? Did Dad use? Yeah. Do as I say and not as I do. Guess what? That means that he's above the rules, right? And when we as fathers see ourselves as above the rules, then we don't have a heavenly mindset. We have to have a mindset where we have a sober self-image. Think of ourselves as we ought. And it says, but to be sober. And you know, I think that's the same word as in Timothy. And you know what that word means? To be sane. Sober is to be sane in one's right mind. And so when we as fathers have these standards where we are holding our kids to standards that we don't apply to ourselves, that's insanity. What would make us think that our children would want to, need to, do the things that we don't even believe we have to do, or not do the things that we think we can do? So we need to keep a sober self-image. And then the next one is in Philippians chapter 3, 12 through 16. Paul is talking to the Philippians about his Christian life. He says, not that I have already attained or am already perfect, but I press on that I may lay hold of that for which Christ Jesus has also laid hold of me. Brethren, I do not count myself to have apprehended, but one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind and reaching forward to those things which are ahead, I press toward the goal for the prize of the upward call of God in Christ Jesus. What is he talking about? What do you think? Do you think he's saying I'm not perfect? I have things in my life that need to change. I need to grow. Move toward the upward call of God in my life. So when I as a father think that I'm never wrong, and I never need to apologize, I never do anything wrong, guess what I don't have? A new life, heavenly mindset about who I am as a person. So you and I, if we want to be heavenly minded fathers or mothers or children, we need to have a heavenly mindset about ourselves. And so that's having a sane image, recognizing that I'm only human, I'm not perfect, I'm not God in this family, I'm not king of this home. I'm a fallible human being, and I have a long way to go before I get to heaven. And as long as I'm here, the only place I should be going is upward. I shouldn't be going straight in my life. I should always seek to grow more, become more godly as a man of God than I am today. Does that make sense? You know, I see a lot of women nodding their heads yes. I don't see any men nodding their heads yes. All right, we need to keep a heavenly mindset about ourselves, guys. We want to be the godly fathers that God has called us to be. We need to keep a heavenly mindset about our responsibilities to our families. Now, what are some of the problems that we can have in parenting? What are some of the things that we can do wrong? Well, as fathers. What was that?
That's where you start.
As fathers.
No, you said where.
Where can we go wrong as
problems,
problems in our home as fathers? Right, as parenting. We'll say parenting. One of the problems that we can have in our homes is legalism. Overly domineering, overly controlling our families, especially our children. Look at Galatians 5, 1 through 10. And I'm going to apply this to family life. Look, it says, "Stand fast, therefore, in the liberty by which Christ has made us free, and do not be entangled again with the yoke of bondage. Indeed, I, Paul, say to you that if you become circumcised, Christ will profit you nothing. And I testify again to every man who becomes circumcised that he is a debtor to keep the law, the whole law. You have become estranged from Christ, you have attempted to be justified by law, you have fallen from grace. For we through the Spirit eagerly wait for the hope of righteousness by faith. For in Christ Jesus neither circumcision nor uncircumcision avails anything, but faith working through love." So when you and I are parenting, and I've been a stricter father than I am now. I was a harsher father than I am now. And we can become legalistic. We can be hard and rigid in our parenting. We can become hard and rigid in our treatment of our children. And what Paul is saying here, which is he's talking about obviously the law and circumcision and following the law, but he's talking about things that take away our liberty and put us into bondage to rules and regulations of do's and don'ts of what you have to do. And when we as fathers establish in our home an atmosphere, a culture where it's all about the do's and don'ts, we're not heavenly minded. We're not heavenly minded fathers. What do we have to have instead? Well, Paul uses some really great words in this passage. At the end of verse 4, what word does he use? Grace. At the end of verse 5, faith. At the end of verse 6, love. These are the things that we need to be about as fathers. Not that you can't have rules. I mean, you have to have order in your home, but when it's all about the order, and there's no grace, there's no faith, there's no love, then we create a culture of regulation and external obedience and not relationship with each other in the home. So, being a legalistic, hard-nosed, do it my way kind of guy. I'm not sure. I'm not getting any response from you guys. This is a bad sermon. Another issue, and I'm guilty of this, you just asked Susie, I'm guilty of this, is becoming, Dad, you're watching your TV show, or you're reading your paper, or you're working on something, maybe the car, or the boat, or the lawnmower, or whatever. And then all of a sudden you hear this screaming and yelling and fisticuffs, and people are rolling around on the ground, and Dad is just like, I don't see a thing. Don't see a thing. Not going to get involved. I'm trying to have a good time. I'm trying to relax. Not my problem. And so finally Mom says, would you get up and do something about those kids? I'm checking to see who's looking at what kids. We as parents we as fathers can abdicate our role of intervening in those situations. Look at Philippians chapter 4, verses 2 through 3. I implore Euodia and I implore Syntyche. How would you like to be these two people? Two people whose only claim to fame in the Bible is that they don't get along. They can't get along with each other. I implore Euodia and I implore Syntyche to be of the same mind in the Lord. And I urge you also, true companion, help these women who labored with me in the gospel with Clement and the rest of my fellow workers whose names are in the book of life. So we as fathers need to work at being peacemakers. Get off the couch. Turn off the TV. Get off the phone. Get off the computer. Leave the car. Come and get involved and be a part of the peacemaking process in your home. Don't make your wife the sole responsibility of doing that. Anybody? There are no amens coming.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. Okay. Actually, this applies to men, women, everybody, right? Another one, and I think this is so dads. Let's kind of review this. We're having sober-mindedness about who we are. We're realizing that we're not perfect, that we have a lot of growing to do, that we're going to make mistakes. We need to apologize. We're going to help our family stand in liberty, in faith, love, and Christ, and truth. And then we're going to work at being peacemakers. And as we're doing all these things, Paul talks about something in Philippians 4:10 that I think is important for us as fathers to keep our eyes in the right place. And that's Philippians 4:10. It says, "But I received in the Lord greatly that now at last your care for me has flourished again, though you surely did care, but you lacked opportunity." That care is mindful. You were mindful of me. Your mindfulness of me has flourished again. Though you surely did care, but you lacked opportunity. What's Paul talking about? Well, do you know what Paul was? He was a tent maker. Why was he tent making?
For a living.
To do what? To go all over the world, to share the gospel. He was a missionary, basically. He would go, first missionary. Paul took 3 somethings. And you learned this at Bible college. 3. Took a lot of friends, didn't he? Garrett?
Oh.
3. Paul took 3.
Read for the dads.
3 dads?
No.
3 missionary journeys, right? 3 missionary journeys. Sorry, that was a little obscure, right? So Paul was a missionary, and he was going all over the world, and this church was mindful of supporting him in that work, because if we are just focused on our own little world, we lose perspective. As Christians, as fathers, there's a lot happening in the world, and what's going on in the world matters just as much as what's happening in our little home, as far as God's kingdom and what's going on. And so we as fathers need to be responsible for having a heavenly mindset in our family and creating that atmosphere. One of the things that we do to create that atmosphere in our home is we have a compassion child. We're praying, we're supporting, we're writing letters to a child somewhere in the world. Another thing we do is the Operation Christmas Child. We're packing boxes, we're buying things and donating them. We're praying for missionaries. We're talking about work. Josh and his friends have gone to the Feed My Starving Children facility in Libertyville to fill bags of food, and it keeps us in a world perspective, because we as Christians are a part of a world church, Christians all over the world. And as fathers, if we can keep our families' eyes on the fact that there are others who need help, that we can help, it helps us to keep a perspective that teaches our children that it's not all about them.
Amen.
And that's what we tend to do in our world, is to make it all about our child. And so we need to be an example of supporting God's work in the world. Then we need to keep a heavenly mindset in our relationship with our kids. Romans 12:16, it says, "Be of the same mind toward one another. Do not set your mind on high things, but associate with the humble. Do not be wise in your own opinion." And so as we interact with our kids, dads, and I hope I'm not disappointing you on an encouraging Father's Day sermon. This is more challenging than encouraging. We shouldn't set our mind on high things. We shouldn't look at our kids as an inconvenience, as just a hassle. Our kids are someone we should humble ourselves to go down to and to be in their level and their world and be a part of that. And yeah, maybe they can't tell you the first 5 digits of pi. Maybe they can't do that. But it shouldn't matter how smart we are. We should always be willing to go down to our children's level and to be a part. So eventually, they're going to be smarter than you are. So there you go. Through the example of you being humble to them, maybe they'll treat you nice too when they find out that you really are. Anyway, Next, here's a tricky one. Philippians 2, 1 through 4. Therefore, if there is any consolation in Christ, if any comfort of love, if any fellowship of the Spirit, if any affection and mercy, fulfill my joy by being like-minded, having the same love, being of one accord, of one mind. Let nothing be done through selfish ambition or conceit, but in lowliness of mind let each one esteem others better than himself. Let each of you look out not only for his own interests, but also for the interests of others. What does this mean? Well, there's a lot of varying ideas about what it means, but I'm going to tell you what I think it means. That word better. We're to have one mind and not see ourselves as better. Or, actually, it doesn't say don't esteem yourself as better, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem others as better. That word better can mean to be over. Let nothing be done through selfish ambition or conceit, but in lowliness of mind, let each of you esteem others to be over you. To be over you. Let each of you look out not only for his own interests, but also for the interests of others. Obligations. Talking about obligations that we have toward each other. If you look at Ephesians 5:21, I'm going to turn there. Ephesians 5:21. In the beginning of Ephesians, in the submission section, Ephesians 5:21 says, submitting to one another in the fear of God. So Paul is telling that in the church of Jesus Christ, as we are growing in our faith, walking in the Spirit, one of the things that we need to do is submit to each other. Every person around you has some authority in your life, is over you in some way, and that you have an obligation from the Lord to treat them in a particular way. And Paul lists this in the rest of Ephesians. In Ephesians 6:22 through 24, he gives wives their responsibility toward their husbands. Wives have responsibilities toward their husbands. Their husbands are over them in that there's this thing God requires of wives in how they treat their husbands. That's only 3 verses. The men, on the other hand, how many verses is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 3 times the obligation in how they treat their wives. Right? So we have an obligation. Men, our wives are over us in the sense that we have an obligation in how we are supposed to treat them, according to the Scriptures. Does it make anybody uncomfortable? Women, for years, women have been told the men are over you. Well, that's true. They are over you and that you have an obligation to them from the Lord, but it's also true of men, that your wives are over you and that you have an obligation to them from the Lord of how you're supposed to treat them. Then it goes on to say that children have a submitting obligation to their parents. Their parents are over them and that they are supposed to treat them a particular way in Ephesians 6. I threw this at Garrett without even telling him. Ephesians 6, 1 through 3. And then it says that fathers have their children are over them and that they have an obligation in how to treat them. It says in Ephesians 6:4, and you fathers do not provoke your children to wrath, but bring them up in the training and admonition of the Lord. And then we have obligations as masters and slaves, or employees and employers to each other. And then there are multiple other obligations that we have to each other in the church. So you and I need to respect the obligations that we have as fathers to those around us. We have to respect the obligations we have to our wives. We have to respect our obligations to our children, to our own parents, and so on and so on. And by submitting to those around us, what are we teaching our children? To submit to those around us. If I refuse to submit to the authorities God has placed in my life, guess what I'm teaching my child? Don't submit. Here's one for fathers whose children are not necessarily walking with the Lord in all the areas of their life right now. Philippians 1, 3 through 7. I thank my God upon every remembrance of you, always in every prayer of mine, making request for you all with joy, for your fellowship in the gospel from the first day until now, being confident of this very thing, that he who has begun a good work in you will complete it until the day of Jesus Christ. Just as it is right for me to think this of you all, because I have you in my heart, inasmuch as both in my chains and in the defense and confirmation of the gospel, you are all partakers with me in grace. You know, we teach our children to follow the Lord, right? Depending on when you got saved and how long you've been saved, you started teaching your children to follow after the Lord. And our children, when they're young, they do what we tell them to do, right? And if they don't, we determine we shouldn't do that, right? No dominance, right? But eventually they grow up. And a lot of times, physically speaking, not necessarily emotionally speaking, but physically speaking, they grow up. And then a lot of times they choose their own path and they do their own thing. And we as fathers can lose hope for our children. We can be discouraged. We can feel like failures. Guess what? We are. We fail in many ways as fathers. But God doesn't expect perfection from us, right? He expects us to have a sober mindset. And He expects us to, what does that say? Not count ourselves as perfect, but to have room to grow in our lives. So obviously we make mistakes. But we can continue to pray for our children. You know, I pray for my kids almost every day. Not necessarily every day, but almost every day. And I have this book called The Power of Praying for Your Adult Children. And I pray this book through this prayer book, a paragraph of prayer every day in the prayers that they list there. And last week, it was on protecting my children from harm on the road, in a plane, as they drive, as they travel, from unseen dangers, from harm. I prayed that, I think it was Friday morning. No, Thursday morning, because Thursday night at worship practice, I got a call from Lydia and Joel. Have you ever seen Lydia and Joel's car? It's this little bitty thing, and I've always thought, Lord, protect them if they ever get an accident. And they were driving, they thought it was a four-way stop, it wasn't, pulled out in front of oncoming traffic and got hit in their car at 50 miles an hour. And she called me from the side of the road, and the car was totaled. And you know what she said? I think Joel has a scratch.
Thank God.
Wow.
You know, we underestimate the power of prayer. You know, we can't. Can you change the mind of an obstinate adult child who knows what it is and knows what everything's all about and knows how to do everything that needs to be done? And can you change that child's mind? Nothing you can do to change that child's mind, right? Except pray.
Amen.
Amen.
Because we can have confidence that He who has begun a good work in you will complete it until the day of Jesus Christ. So I made a lot of mistakes as a dad. I blew it many times, not perfect. Maybe thought I was back then, and realize now that I'm not. Actually, before now, praise God, realized that I wasn't a perfect father. And so I can only trust in God to undo the mistakes that I've made, to undo the things that I've done to damage my children. And it's through prayer and confession and repentance and apologies and change that I trust that God is going to do something. It's His work, it's His job, not mine. But I do have a responsibility, and that responsibility is to pray for my children. So in order to be a new life dad, we need to be devoted to thinking heavenly things. We need to have a heavenly mindset about ourselves, about our responsibilities, and on our relationship with our kids. So, point number one, that's a long point. We can be new life dads by being mindfully devoted to heavenly things. So it says, set your mind on things above, not on things of the earth. Verse 3, it says, for you died, and your life is hidden with Christ in God. Dad, you're dead. you trusted Christ for your forgiveness, you're dead. You died. And your life is hidden with Christ in God. It says in John 10:27, verses 27 through 30, it says, "My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me, and I give them eternal life, and they shall never perish. Neither shall anyone," what? "Snatch them out of my hand. My Father who has given them to me is greater than all. No one is able to what? Snatch them out of my Father's hand. I and my Father are one." So dads, you are hidden with Christ. Your life is in the hands of God right now.
Amen.
Praise God. Moms, children, it's all true of you too. In Romans 8:38 and 39, "For I am persuaded that neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor powers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor height, nor depth, nor any other created thing shall be able to separate us from the love of God which is in Christ Jesus our Lord." Nothing can separate us from the love of God. Nothing. Is that what it says? Is that what it says?
Yes.
Okay.
Nothing.
So what does that mean?
Nothing.
It means you and I are absolutely secure. Absolutely secure. Nothing can change our relationship with God. Nothing can take it away. Nothing we do. Nothing anyone else does. Nothing that happens in the world. We are with God right now in His hands. Have you ever seen the movie Groundhog Day?
Yes.
Obviously. I mean, we live 20 minutes away from where they filmed it, right? And in that movie, what does... Who's the Bill Murray. What does Bill Murray decide once he realizes that nothing can hurt him? He does whatever he wants. He does whatever he wants, right? Now, the world would say if you were absolutely, had total security, if you had total financial security, the world would say, spend all the money you can, enjoy all of life that life has to offer. If you were a superhero, you saw all these superhero movies that are out. If you were a superhero, you had these superpowers, do whatever you want, live life any way you want, right? That's what the world would say. But what God says is that because you are eternally secure, it should drive you to live for the one who secures you. You have nothing to fear. I have nothing to fear in this world. No persecution, no opposition, no firing squad, nothing. No Muslim extremist, nothing. I have nothing to fear, although it is kind of scary. I don't have to fear about my eternal soul and where that's happening, where that's going to go when I die, right? So I have nothing to fear about that. And because I have nothing to fear, I should live my life in gratitude to the one who holds me and secures me, right? Dads, we should live a life of obedience out of gratefulness for what God has done for us. For you died and your life is hidden with Christ in God. And then verse 4, finally, when Christ who is our life appears, then you also will appear with him in glory. We can be new life dads if we remember what we're looking forward to. So we can be new life dads if we remember that our lives are hidden with Christ, but we can also be new life dads if we remember what we are looking forward to. When Christ who is our life appears, then you also will appear with him in glory. 1 John 3:2 says, "Beloved, now we are the children of God, and it has not yet been revealed what we shall be, but we know that when he is revealed, we will be like him, for we will see him just as he is." What does that mean? Well, in 1 Corinthians 15, verses 48 through 55, it talks about the mortal. Right now we're mortal. You and I are dust. Anybody feel that this morning? Anybody got any aches and pains? A little bit of headache, getting tired, a little scratchy throat, whatever, right? We're dust. But when Christ appears, when we either die and go with him in heaven, or when he comes and takes us home, it says that we will put off our mortality and put on immortality. What does immortality look like? It looks like Jesus. What did Jesus do? What could he do? Some of the things he could do after he rose from the dead. Maybe things we'll be able to do when we are immortal. Walk through walls, wouldn't that be cool?
Not have pain.
No pain, no suffering. Could he eat? Yeah, he ate. Cool. Yeah. Maybe we can eat all the dessert we want and never have to gain any weight, right?
Amen.
What else could he do?
Appeared. Disappeared.
Just appeared and disappeared? There he is. No, he's not. What else? Maybe ascended. Is that what you were saying, ascended? Fly. How many of you have ever had flying dreams, right? That would be awesome, wouldn't it? That we could fly and transport and go all over the universe and go into heaven and not have any limitations. That's the kind of body we're going to get. Immortality. Amen? I'm looking forward to that. I hope you are too. And once that happens to us, in verse 1 Thessalonians 4:17, then we who are alive and remain shall be caught together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, those who have already died. And thus we shall always be with the Lord. So we're going to have perfect bodies. We're going to be able to do amazing things and do go all kinds of places, things we can't even imagine. And we're going to be with the Lord forever. Garrett and I were having a philosophical debate about whether there's time in heaven. And people say there is no time in heaven. And I just, what is time? Time is moment by moment moving forward with change, right? A series. What happens if time stops? Does anything change? Everything stays the same, right? So I think time will be in heaven. Just my philosophical, but that it won't matter. There will be still a series of events where things change.
No aging.
We have jobs to do. We praise the Lord after the first million years of praising God. Maybe we'll have something else to do. I don't know. But there's a series of events that's going to happen. And so time will be there, but for us it will be irrelevant because it's not limited. We won't ever have to stop because we will be with the Lord forever. But here's a thought that I want to encourage us to think about as dads. 2 Corinthians 5:9-11. Therefore, because of this, because of the eternal life that we're looking forward to, spending eternity with God in heaven, Jesus in heaven, in our perfect bodies, therefore we make it our aim, whether present or absent, to do whatever we want. No, to be well-pleasing to Him. Why? For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, that each one may receive the things done in his body according to what he has done, whether good or bad. You know, in Matthew, Jesus tells a parable about the landowner who gives money to his servants. 10 talents, 5 talents, 1 talent, right? Or is it 5 talents, 2 talents, 1 talent? That's what it is. And the one with 5 talents got 5 more because of investment and being a good worker, right? And so what does the king say to, and now there are 2 different versions of the story, what does the king say to the one with the 10 talents? He says, well done, thou good and faithful servant, I will put you in charge of 10 cities. You remember reading that? So there's some indication that what we do, where we are in heaven, how we live, our role in heaven is somehow tied to how we live here on earth. So you can't get any more reward after you die than you get while you're here on earth. Because once you're in heaven, you're perfect, and there's no reward because you're perfect. But on earth, we get rewards for being godly, eternal rewards for being godly, because it requires us to make a decision of obedience to God. That we have a choice whether we make it or not. You and I have the choice to be good dads or not. We have the choice to be good moms or not. We have the choice to be good children or not. We have the choice of being good grandparents or not. And Paul says, because of this, because we know what's coming, that we are going to have to give an account for what we do, and that we're going to get rewarded for what we do, we need to take it seriously here on earth and how we live. And we need to be the best dads that we can. You need to be a perfect dad. You can't be, right? We already learned that. You can't be. But you can be a better dad. You can be a better mom, a better grandma, a better grandpa, a better kid, a better son, a better daughter. We need to set our minds on the things above, not on things of the earth. Let's go back here. For you died and your life is hidden with Christ in God. And when Christ, who is our life, appears, then you also will appear with him in glory. What we do here on earth matters because this is where we establish our place in God's heavenly kingdom forever. I don't understand all that, but there is some correlation between my life here and my life there. And so it matters how I live, the choices I make. Am I going to have a heavenly mindset, or am I going to have an earthly mindset? God wants you to have the right mindset so you can be the new life dads, moms, and kids God created you to be. So it's a little over the top challenging, dads. So in recompense for my beating you up this morning, I have candy. So dads, I have purchased a plethora of candy here, so hopefully you'll find something that you like. I even bought sugar-free candy this year, so I'm more conscious of that kind of a person now. So yeah, where's the fun in that? So I would invite dads to come on up and grab a bag of candy. Dads, come on. Come on, dads, don't be shy. Get up. Do it. All right, dads.
You're gonna look for that candy, Craig? You're gonna look for that candy?
Come on, dads. Get up here.
You know what's funny? They gave me this morning $3 again.
You know, unfortunately, this year I don't get to tell you what she knows that means we get to want steaks.
Candy steak?
Yeah, sure.
No, Dad, I'm going to be sober for this sermon today.
All right, we're doing good. Dads? Hopefully you find something like I just went to the dollar store and I grabbed one of everything.
So I'm
Hold on. If you're a kid here today and your dad isn't here, and you want to come and get a piece of candy for your dad, come on up. Here, I'm gonna help out.
Okay. For you.
Oh, look at that. What does he like? Maybe we can get somebody else to give it up and give it.
Whatever he likes is gone.
Reese's peanut butter cup. These are. All right. I'm gonna get your dad's Reese's peanut butter cups. All right. He's got them in his office.
Yeah.
I don't have them in my office. There was a day when I had Reese's peanut butter cups. Okay, so at this point, the ladies are gonna pray for us as dads. So dads, why don't you stand with us as we pray. Come on, dads, stand.
Heavenly Father, you are an amazing and perfect Father. And it's a lot for these dads to live up to. And we know that they cannot ever be perfect like you. But we just pray that they come to you for their struggles and their concerns with their families, and that they think of you first and how they react to their wives and their children, Lord. We lift them up and help them to be fathers on fire for you, because when they're on fire for you, those other things come a little more naturally. Lord, we thank you for the men that are here today, that they've come to worship you, Father, as their Heavenly Father, and just continue to grow them closer to you, Lord, so that they can continue to be the leaders of their home. I'm grateful for my own father, Lord, and I pray today that all of us who can't be with our fathers, whether they're already with you in heaven or are far away from us, that they can just know that they are loved for all the things that they've provided for their children and their families.
God, we just thank you and praise you for all the fathers that are represented here. We ask, God, that you would encourage them and strengthen them to walk with you and follow you in your ways. God, that you would just give them a boost this week in their walk with you. Pray, God, that you and their families help them, Lord, as they're trying to lead and making decisions that will honor you. And just give them a great day today, Lord, to enjoy being fathers and enjoy their Father in heaven. In Jesus'